When you think about comics, what comes to mind? Impossible gadgets? Outlandish powers? Tight spandex? Well, what about reimaginings? The big two, DC and Marvel, have had properties around for years, and they are constantly reimagining to keep their properties as vital cash cows for their companies. A prime example of this is the web-slinging wall-crawler Spider-Man. Over the last decade, we have seen Spidey change from an exceptionally nerdy adult pretending to be a kid, to an exceptionally emo adult pretending to be a kid, to just a well-written kid. Now we have one of Spidey's most infamous foes getting a solo shot at the silver screen, and it got me thinking about the last time we saw the parasitic goo.
Ooh, my spider sense is tingling. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So this got me thinking, is Spider-Man 3's Venom accurate to the comics? Hello everybody, I'm Nero from ToonGrin.com. I've been a comic book fan since I was 7 years old. Now that I'm pushing 30, I've realized I've enjoyed the art of graphic storytelling for well near 23 years. And as a seasoned comic reader, I've been there for the highs and the lows. So low. So many lows. So before I tackle the movie interpretation, we need a brief history of the goo from the comics. Published May 1988, Amazing Spider-Man number 300 gave readers the introduction of what would become an iconic Spider-Man villain, simply known as Venom. Before he was bonded to an alien parasite, Venom was Eddie Brock, a columnist for the Daily Globe. In the comics, Eddie was writing a series of articles based on murders committed by a serial killer known as the Sin Eater. Eventually, Eddie's contacted by a man named Emil Gregg, who confesses to being the Sin Eater. Now, since Eddie is an opportunist, he writes articles about Gregg that skyrocket his career. However, when pressured by police, Eddie breaks reporter confidentiality and openly prints Gregg's identity in the paper. Spider-Man would go on to capture the real culprit, a policeman named Stan Carter, causing Eddie to become a laughingstock, and now the only work he can get was writing venomous celebrity exposés. And that's why he's called Venom. Depressed, Eddie goes to church for salvation while contemplating suicide. Fortunately for him in the rafters, Spider-Man is fending off the alien using the powerful sound of the bells to drive it away. The black goo drips down, and sensing Brock's hatred for Spider-Man, combined with the symbiote's own hatred for being rejected by Peter, the two bond and become the vicious entity known as Venom.
We are Venom!
Knowing all that, we can now cross-compare comic Venom with movie Venom. In 2007, moviegoers got their first look at Venom in Spider-Man 3, famously considered to be the worst Spider-Man movie at the time due to...
Now dig on this.
reasons. And if you watch the movie today, a lot of those reasons are still pretty valid. In the comics, Eddie can be best described as a roid rage-filled man-mountain, who is physically imposing even without the alien. It's remarkable that even before becoming a supervillain, he was just ginormous. The movie went for a different approach to play with the thematic of Eddie being a dark reflection of Peter. So they cast sitcom star of That 70s Show, Topher Grace.
Who are you?
It's Brock, sir. Edward Brock Jr. I work at the Daily Bugle. And I'm dating your daughter.
While not visually accurate to Eddie's appearance in the comics, the concept is not bad, and the character of Eddie Brock, I argue, is actually pretty accurate representation of the character from the comics. In the comics, Eddie Brock is a pretty scummy opportunist who uses a killer's accomplishments to skyrocket his career. In the movie, Eddie's bad quality is still intact, just tweaked to show he's a dark reflection of Peter.
I'm the new guy.
New guy?
Now on, I am going to be taking shots at you for the Bugle.
They got a guy.
Who, Parker? Yeah, look, just between you and me, guy's kind of an amateur. Have you noticed his stuff makes you look a little bloated? Just, yeah, a little chunky.
In the movie, Peter and Eddie are gunning for the same position at the Daily Bugle, and the boss of the Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson, makes an offer that whoever can get a picture of Spider-Man proving the wall-crawler to being a menace will get the job.
You'll never get that shot.
Oh, we'll see.
Now in the comics, Eddie failed to really check his sources, making him come off more like a dimwit when he's outed, and his life is ruined. There's still a bit of sympathy in that angle though. Not too much, he's still a dunderhead, but you do realize that he wasn't being malicious, even if he was kind of a scummy opportunist about it. The movie, however, has Eddie actively engage in fake news by taking old pictures of Spider-Man that Peter took, and then photoshops them to make the wall crawler look like a criminal.
It's a fake. Empire State Photographic Department confirms it.
Pack your things. Get out of my building.
I was just
You're fired!
Come to think of it, Eddie used old pictures that Peter took, which would have been credited in the papers as photos by Peter Parker. So Eddie being a dunce is still true to character between the two mediums. Eddie being an idiot is further cemented because afterwards he has the gall to ask Peter to cut him a break and let him get away with this so he can get the job that he and Peter are competing for at the Bugle.
Look, I'm begging you. If you do this, I will lose everything. There's not a paper in town that will hire me.
You should have thought of that earlier.
Is Brock really this stupid?
Yeah, man. I'm just trying to get by, even if it means doing something scummy and possibly ruining a respected paper's reputation. Is that so wrong?
Are you meant to be sympathetic in this version?
I think so.
In the comics, Eddie's dislike of Spider-Man comes from Spidey unintentionally outing Brock for false reporting. In the movie, it's much more shallow, as Brock is angry that Spider-Man broke his camera this one time.
Give me some of that web action.
What the hell?
Now, at least in the movie, Parker actively did something to Brock instead of passively did something to Brock. So I guess it's technically better, but still not. Then you got the Gwen Stacy stuff, which isn't even in the comics, but in the movie, Eddie's hatred comes from not only Peter costing him a job, but Eddie sees Peter with Gwen Stacy and he becomes jealous. The movie establishes Eddie is infatuated with this woman, like a stalker. He even mentions that he plans to marry Gwen despite having coffee one time.
I want a staff job, sir. I have a girl that I intend to marry. What about that amazing night that we had?
We had coffee, Eddie.
Oof, that face. Anyone else getting severe creep vibes? Because that's what a creep looks like. That could have been his villain moniker. Could have called him the Creep. Still would have beaten the comic book origin of the name. Printing venomous articles, and therefore he is Venom. I mean, the movie doesn't even call him Venom even once, so yeah. In the comics, Eddie is a delusional dork who sees himself as the victim, blaming Spider-Man for his own screw-up. The movie captures this perfectly, as after Eddie's bonded with the symbiote, he blames Peter for his humiliation.
We can find a way to settle this.
You're so right. I'm thinking humiliation. Kind of like how you humiliated me. Do you remember? Do you remember what you did to me?
Are you really trying to play yourself up as the victim in all this?
My life is like a fart!
Now, arguably the most famous approach with Venom is the famous church scene. In the comics, Peter fends off the creature in a bell tower while below Brock is contemplating suicide and seeking some sort of religious intervention. The symbiote then drips down onto Eddie, the two bond and become Venom. In the movie, it's nearly identical with Eddie seeking religious intervention.
I come before you today to ask you for one thing. I want you to kill Peter Parker.
Did you even read my book? Don't know if you know this, brah, but one of my big no-nos is thou shalt not kill. You weenie.
Really, Eddie's religious hypocrisy is perfectly intact. In the comics, he considers himself a Catholic, believing suicide to be a sin, but still openly kills a police officer after breaking into a church once he has the symbiote. In the movie, he must consider himself a Catholic. He went to church, and this is obviously lifting from the comic books. And what does he do? He asks God to kill somebody for him. Just further cementing Brock as a scumbag. So with all that said and done, is Spider-Man 3's Venom accurate to the comics? I'd say so. An angry, bitter little snot who screws up his life repeatedly and then projects it onto others and blames everyone around him as he victimizes himself is really accurate to the comics. When it comes to Spider-Man 3, it's by no means a perfect movie. Nobody has or ever will likely say that. But Eddie being an irrational man-baby of remarkable stupidity who blames others for his screw-ups and sees himself as a victim who is then fortunate enough to get an alien costume that makes for a neat design? Yeah, the movie translates that from pages to pictures perfectly. In my opinion, a perfect summation of Eddie Brock is that a loser with an alien suit is still a loser. Thanks for stopping by, and if you'd like to hear a different perspective on Venom, head on over to my friend Jambreeqi's channel where he gives his thoughts. Also, if you want, stop on by Dr. CRAFTY's show. He was generous to provide the voice for Peter Parker in this video, and I can't thank him enough. Feel free to comment below so we can discuss what you think. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell, follow us on social media, and if you'd like, you can support us by Patreon or TeePublic. Links are in the description below, and as always, be sure to tune in to ToonGrin.